Welcome into this week's episode of High School OT Press Box. Evan Moesta here alongside J. Mike Blake. It is September 14th. That is the day of recording for this week's episode. We just wrapped up week number 4 of the high school football season and the 5th week of the fall sports NCHSAA season. Let's talk about one of the top NCHSAA athletes from a year ago, and that is the reigning state Gatorade Player of the Year in boys basketball, Dionte Neal, a two-sport star in football and basketball for Reedsville High School. He's been an all-state performer for High School OT his entire career. He's been to multiple state championships, has won multiple basketball state titles, and a football state title as a sophomore. He's a 3-time state champion, and now Dionte Neal is the newest Spartan of UNC-Greensboro. He announced his commitment on Sunday afternoon in a ceremony at the school. He had lots of choices, and I think there was a lot of speculation, J. Mike, over where was he going to go, because he had these options to play multiple sports and take multiple avenues. In case you were wondering, he had offers to play in both sports, football and basketball, at Boston College and Appalachian State. Duke in North Carolina had offered him for football, and then Old Dominion and UNCG had offered him for basketball. And he chooses basketball, where, again, he is the reigning Gatorade Player of the Year and State Player of the Year, as voted on by the Coaches Association. J. Mike, he's going to be a hometown hero where in an area where he's already the local legend.
Yeah, and I think this is an interesting decision, right? I think it tells us a few things about perhaps how he views himself and maybe what some of the coaches have told him. Maybe they've already said, hey, you've got the keys to this program. As soon as you step on campus, or we think highly of it, you can run the show. Because if you look at the certain recruiting services, he's been in an NBA top 100 camp. He is, in some ways, like, I think the lowest you'll see him ranked is like 150, 175 range. That's pretty high for UNC Greensboro mostly. And I think he's probably been told, like, hey, you're good to go if you come here. And maybe he also kind of sees himself where I think a lot of us kind of agree that his future might actually be in basketball, which is counter to what you would think for a player of his size, right? He is a small point guard, and on the football field, he's not as small of a player, but he's just so good. He's just so good with the ball in his hands.
He's the ultimate floor general.
The ultimate floor general. So fast end to end. I mean, he's going to end his career. I mean, barring injury, if he has a normal season and this year with Reedsville, he will be a 4-time all-state performer for us in football, but also a 4-time first teamer in basketball. We almost never find ourselves with a freshman on first team, but he was averaging a double-double in assists and points his very freshman year, and they lost in the state championship game. So he's an incredible winner. Everyone who watches him knows that he's just the coach's dream. So wherever he goes, he'll be successful. But I do think this is a little bit unlike the decision another Reedsville Ram made a few years back, Breon Pass. Breon Pass had football and basketball offers. He chose basketball, went to state, and stuck it out. I think for a lot of people, they looked at Breon Pass and said, hey, it can go either way. I could see him being a really good not NFL, but really a college football receiver, return guy. A lot of people thought he was better at football. I think with Dionte, he's just so good at basketball. This helped steer him towards the Spartans, and he's going to stay pretty close to home.
Yeah, I think that's the cool thing, and definitely that's a pitch for Mike Jones over there at UNCG, as he's trying to build back up that program to where it was during Wes Miller's tenure a few years back. But yeah, this just feels like a really good fit for him. If you're gonna elect to play basketball only, this just feels like the natural fit given his offers and given the interest. And also in today's landscape of college athletics, I mean, we see so many guys who kind of have that itch to go back to another sport that they played in high school, and there are now the avenues to do that down the road if that is what he ends up, wanting to do at another point. Obviously, UNCG does not field a football program, but yeah, I mean, he's the ultimate floor general. I mean, he's the ultimate leader. I think some of these gaudy stats that he's put up over his first 3 years could grow even more, because there's not a Janiah Sharp. There probably isn't going to be a Kendra Harrison, from all that we've heard. And so it's going to be the Dionte Neal show to the fullest. And I think that's
Yeah.
going to be really fun. I think we're going to see a guy who averages almost 30 points a game, which is not something that a player of his caliber typically does. And it's wild because given his stats last year, again, I don't have them in front of me, but it was something like, 16, 17 points a game, well over, 9, 10 assists a night. And that was good enough for Gatorade Player of the Year. So what's going to happen if these stats double? What's going to happen if these stats more than double? and we saw him a little bit this summer, and obviously it wasn't the best summer for Reedsville team in terms of wins, losses, because they're having to work so many younger guys and newer guys into the fold. But when it was time to get a bucket, it was really fun because you knew it was going to be Dionte.
Yeah.
And I also think he's going to have this added layer of leadership that's going to really benefit him going to UNCG, because the success of Reedsville basketball this year is going to rely upon what he's capable of doing and his leadership and how he brings along the other guys in that program, because there are going to be a lot of new faces.
Yeah. And so Dionte, I don't know what he's listed at. Let's call him 5'9". Last year, Evan, his stats, he was actually the leading scorer on that last year's team with Kendra Harrison and Janiah Sharp, 3 first-teamers on the high school OT All-State boys basketball team. But Dionte Neal led them in points, 22.9. He also had 4.8 rebounds, so he had more than Sharp. He had 9.3 assists and 7.1 steals. And if you watch a Reedsville game, especially against some certain competition, that's not an inflated number. He can get 7.1.
That's real.
7.1 steals a game. 88% from the free throw line last year, 65% from the field, 63 from 3. He basically only shot threes when he was all alone because he could play within the flow of the offense. They can get a better shot than a Sharp coming off a screen for a 3 or Kendra down the block. So if he shoots it, it's because the ball's rotated and he's alone. So he's an incredible shooter, incredible player. And this year he's going to go out, and because we think that Kendra said a few things on social media that indicate he's not going to play basketball this year, that means it's just going to be Dionte going out as the 4-time All-State football, 4-time All-State basketball guy. And so he kind of is going to get a lot of his flowers that, rightfully have been kind of shared with Kendra Harrison, because they've come up together and done all these things together. Kendra, I think, recognized his futures in football. I think most of us agree with that. He's incredible at basketball, but the matchup problems he gives as a tight end, the right thing for him to do was to go where there's a better football program than basketball, which is Oregon. And if he wants to play basketball, or the coach will gladly take him, then great. But both guys doing what is best for them. But like you said, this basketball court, the two may go their separate ways. We don't know if that's, people say things and sometimes you find, oh, they're playing their senior year after all. Or maybe they don't early enroll or whatever. But if it is, he's prepared to take on the scoring role because he can create his own offense with the way he plays man-to-man defense, gets into passing lanes. And I wouldn't be surprised if his assist numbers are still high, because he's still going to blow by his man, and all of a sudden the help defense shifts and he's going to kick out to someone who's open. It may not be Janiah Sharp on the corner, but it'll be somebody who's going to feel a lot more comfortable getting this pass from Dionte Neal. And we're really looking at one of the most decorated athletes. him and Kendra, if you think about it, 2 of the most decorated athletes in the last 25 years statewide. It's really, really cool to have been able to cover those guys. And I'm excited for at least one more year on the hardwood to cover Dionte.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Breon Pass, where do you ever find a bridge from Breon Pass to 2 more legendary athletes like Dionte Neal and Kendra Harrison? But I'm going to add, if you're a high school sports fan, I'm not even going to limit it to being a high school basketball fan. If you are a high school sports fan and you love high school sports in the state of North Carolina in its purest form, I know we talk way too much about the state of high school athletics and how it isn't what it used to be, and how there was obviously transfer news that even happened in the football world on Friday that we discussed on the post-game show with Joel Bryant. You need to go watch Dionte Neal, and you need to go to Reedsville and do it. Speaking of Reedsville, I think I just saw a photo up on Facebook earlier today. New air conditioning and a newly resurfaced floor. So I'm excited about that. As somebody who's a geek about high school basketball floors, I'm excited to see Reedsville's new resurfaced floor. But you have to go to Reedsville. You have to watch Dionte Neal play, because this is the last of a dying breed.
Yeah.
There are not Dionte Neals out there anymore that are so loyal, so talented, so humble, just the leader that he is, the talent that he has, the importance that he has to his community, and the awareness that he has of where he stands in his community. And he's really kind of fulfilling this, duty that he has to deliver for this regional community that is so passionate about its football and its basketball. I mean, you have to go watch him. It is worth the price of admission. It is worth going all the way up to Reidsville and checking it out. The atmosphere is awesome. And you're going to watch what could be the last of like a dying breed of loyal public school athletes in the state of North Carolina that just are so true for 4 years to what they do. You're not going to see this. I mean, we haven't seen a four-time all-state basketball player, first team football, basketball. This just doesn't happen. So the clock's ticking. You need to catch a regional football game. You need to catch a regional basketball game. And you need to watch Dionte Neal play because they don't make many like him, and there probably won't be one of those for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of, again, he's the reigning Gatorade Player of the Year as the top boys basketball player in the state of North Carolina last year. Potentially, he could join his classmate, teammate, Kendra Harrison, possibly your NCHSA Male Athlete of the Year this year, possibly, just because of the impact he made. But I think we're going to switch gears here and talk about some athletes now that we're 5 weeks into the fall season, just over a month. Teams have gotten through the early phase of non-conference. They're starting to gear up for conference play. I want to do a little bit of a draft, J. Mike. I want to go through, regardless of sport, we're going to go 5 rounds here. I want to pick 5 athletes each that have made the biggest impact through this fall. So that is up until now. We're recording this on September 14th. I'm going to let J. Mike get the first overall pick in this draft, but this doesn't necessarily need to be the best player, the statistical leader, just somebody who has made such an impact this fall, whether it be on their program or on the statewide scene. You go first, J. Mike. Who is your 1-1 first overall pick of the most impactful player in the state of North Carolina so far this fall?
All right, I'm going to go with Genevieve Harris, Cardinal Gibbons, volleyball. It doesn't hurt when you take someone who might factor into the Olympic world one day, playing her sport and as an Olympian. But the reason that I can kind of justify this answer in a lot of ways is she missed the first week or so of the season, being overseas, playing international competition. Then she comes back, and her first match, they dropped the first set to D.H. Conley. Remember, they got swept by Green Level without her. Dropped the first set to D.H. Conley. And Evan, you and I were at that match. That's the high school OT Garner volleyball showcase. And she just kind of like would not let that stand. Like you can see the intensity she brought to the team. They've been on a roll since then. They beat Marvin Ridge in a rematch of last year's championship, 3-2. This past weekend were in Louisville competing against a lot of out-of-state teams. And usually when Gibbons takes that trip to Louisville, they haven't in years. But when it's like a whole bunch of Catholic schools meeting in Louisville, which has a lot of Catholic schools.
I mean, like you got like Assumption and schools like that who are like some of the top like legendary programs.
I've seen previous years. I'm talking about back in my newspaper days where Gibbons would take that trip and lose 4 matches and then run through everybody else in North Carolina. But they didn't lose all those matches. I think they won like at least 2, if not 3 matches up there in Louisville. And again, I don't think that happens without the person who could set up everybody else and just the engine that makes everything go. So again, like the team we saw, the high school team showcase, the cool thing about volleyball is as long as there's no friction on the team, no team chemistry issues, you just get better and better as a unit as you go along and stronger, and that's going to continue. So I'm taking her, the Texas recruit, with my number 1 pick.
I like it. I'm going to go girls tennis. I'm going to take Pauline Bowie, Terry Sanford, reigning state champion who continues to roll through the first portion of their season. Terry Sanford has played a really good schedule as one of the, they were your preseason number one, J. Mike, in girls tennis, and they've played a challenging schedule, and she's kind of met the bill here in the early part of the season. And I think it's safe to say she's going to continue to roll on at this pace and potentially go back to back.
Yeah, great. She's done a fantastic job. The big showdown was against Gibbons. The team lost. So in our midseason girls tennis rankings, we'll have a new number one. But she won her match pretty easily, 6-0, 6-1. So that's a good indicator of someone that's, it's going to be a showdown, though, because I think I have a pick later on that'll be an interesting competition now that all the classifications have changed.
I have one, too, to your first pick. So carry on. Let me see. Let me get your second pick.
My second pick, I'm going to stay in volleyball.
Okay.
I'm going to go with Ellie Randolph of Reagan.
Okay.
And I know that's someone that you have keyed on early in her career as like the next person up, right? This year, the kill numbers are so ridiculously high from where she is. She's played in 57 sets. I know that's a good number, but she has 352 kills, and that's 6.2 per set. That is outstanding. She's a Kentucky recruit. I just look at the eye-popping numbers, and you know that they're legit. And Reagan is a team that struggled to get over the hump in 4A West. I know it's not going to get easier because now they're 7A West, and there's Marvin Ridge out there. But Ellie Randolph, I think when you look at the numbers that she's put up as an outside hitter versus everybody else, are so like there's such a gap there that is, and she's taken a step forward. And I know I'm kind of like taking up a person that you've covered a lot in your career, but she's taken that step forward that you saw coming. Like that this is like the match. Like, hey, she's really good. Just imagine what she could be next year. Here it is. You were right. You were right, but I'm taking her with my second pick. I'm the two volleyball players.
I'm pretty sure I saw somewhere like last week she got her 1,000th career kill, which is crazy to know that she still has a couple more years or a couple more months of her junior season and then her senior year. That number can continue to inflate. All right, I'm going to take on the topic that your first overall pick was Genevieve Harris, and on the topic of 7A West volleyball, I'm going to take Jillian Young, the setter at Marvin Ridge. Maybe not the flashiest pick, but in terms of impact to their team, Marvin Ridge has not dropped off from a year ago when they competed in the 4A state championship, and they did graduate 3 or 4 starters from that team, and they graduated a lot of really high impact players from that team. And this is Jillian Young's first year with the full reins to the setter position for the Mavericks. Obviously, she played a lot in different rotations and in different roles last year and was good in those roles, but she's kind of taken that next step. And Marvin Ridge is right there in the mix as what I now have them as the number 3 team in the state. They went punch for punch with Genevieve Harris and Cardinal Gibbons a few weeks back in a thrilling 5th set. And I think the 5th was 15-13 maybe. I think that's one of those like budding, quote unquote, like state championship style rivalries where they're probably going to meet again in 7A. And at some point, I just feel like Marvin Ridge is going to break through and catch Gibbons one time. Is it going to be this year? I don't know. But Young in that match had 50 assists. And she's consistently putting together matches where she's averaging over 10 assists a set. She's having, I had something like 5 or 6 matches with over 30, and it's not like those matches are going 4 or 5 sets. They're winning 3-0 convincingly. She's really talented. I mean, you watch her on the floor kind of in a full-time role now as a setter. You're like, oh, wow, it's one of the top setters in the entire state. So I'm going to take Jillian Young of Marvin Ridge with my second pick.
Gosh, I like that pick. I'm going to go back to the 704 here and go with I'm going with boys soccer, so I'm no longer in the volleyball world. Boys soccer, and this is a player who I have not seen personally. I hope to this year. He is, to my knowledge, the only Division I recruit that's actively playing boys soccer. There may be another one out there that I've missed, but it's Ben Horgan of Gaston Day. Now, he has 15 goals and 13 assists in just 8 matches. Gaston Day is 6-2 in those matches. And the two that they've lost were both by the identical score of 7-5. So they're scoring goals even when they lose. They're scoring. It's hard to say, hey, we lost 2 matches. We had to combine 10 goals in those games, by the way. We lost them both. But those are the kind of numbers that he's relied on, not just as a finisher, but also creating chances for his teammates. And that's what you have to do when you're Division One. You have to play that way. And he has absolutely done it. Again, I hope I get to see him later in the year, but that is another, to me, that's like a headliner, like my other 2 picks, who is living up to the billing, who is, I mean, he could possibly be like Gatorade Player of the Year with what he's been able to do. So, again, Ben Horgan, 15 goals, 13 assists in only 8 matches. That's about 5.3 points per game that you're putting up, and that's really good pace, but also I think he can continue going. They've challenged themselves here in the non-conference. One of those 7-5 losses was to Carmel Christian, another one to Caldwell Academy. They'll have to meet Caldwell Academy in the playoffs, more than likely, at some point. But I think if the Spartans go back-to-back, he'll be a big reason why.
Yeah, you see those high impact D1 kids because there's not many of them in boys soccer nowadays. You saw Drew Waller a couple of years ago at West Cabarrus, who was the Carolina recruit. I think Myers Park might have one more.
You're right. Yeah,
Who's your number 1 team in the state right now.
Yep.
So yeah, not many of them, but when there are, you have to cherish them, and obviously it's nice to see. Not only do they have like that, they're going to have a target on their back because you're a Division I commit, but to them perform at that level is a completely other thing. So that is your third pick. I got to make my third. I'm going to stay in boys soccer to counteract you here.
Okay.
You got a guy who scores a lot. I'm going to get a guy who keeps people from scoring a lot, and that's Eamon Hips, the keeper at Western Alamance, another defending state champion. Saw him against Southwestern Randolph. That was a 2-1 win, I think now 2 weeks back maybe. But it was a marquee top 5 matchup, and I've seen Southwestern Randolph a lot over the last 3 years. And they are better than almost anyone in the state when it comes to making something out of nothing in the run of play. It very quickly in minimal touches, they can go, end to end and put a ball in the back of the net. It does not take long for them to be able to score, and it's why when you look at their schedule, I think it was something like that. Southwest or the Western Alamance match was only the 6th time in the last 3 years that they had scored 1 goal or less in a game. I think they've only been shut out 2 or 3 times in that 3-year stretch that they've had, Fernando Hernandez and Aaron Avina and guys like that. And so he made some stops in that match. He had one where a post saved him on a free kick, but he made some stops in that match that were incredible. We saw last year in the state championship, he stood on his head to make some stops in what was a crazy second half against Ashboro, I believe it was.
Yeah, where they were down 3-0 and then won 4-3.
Yeah, and so I mean, he's quietly one of the top keepers in the state. I don't think that's too far out of. I think that's a fair assessment, right?
Yeah,
I mean, when you're over 4.5 stops per match, like he is this season, and it's not like he has like a poor defense in front of him. Like any chance that somebody's able to generate on him, he's there. He's big. He's athletic. Has a big leg. So, he's going to be my pick for impact player so far. 2 more picks, J. Mike. Who you can take?
All right, I'm going cross country on this one, and
okay,
I'm going to go cross country and homeschool on you. Okay.
Okay.
Owen Munn of Greensboro Homeschool, the Gladiators. He has the fastest time in the state this year in cross country. Now, I know things are different and with different courses, right? And generally speaking, you kind of find those things out as you go throughout the season. And then the championship courses, sometimes we have to consider who raced on what championship course, which one was faster, how are the conditions, etc. Now, he raced on a very fast course, the Bob Shilley Invitational back on August 16th. That's at East Davidson High School, and it markets itself as lightning fast course. I don't care how fast your course is. When you break 15 minutes in a 5K, you are moving, okay? And he didn't just break 15 minutes by a hair. 14 minutes, 46 seconds That's how fast he
Jeez.
was. So like,
All right.
there's a chance that holds up the entire rest of the year, no matter what anyone else does, just because of the combination of factors. But like, you can't take that away from anybody when they run 14:46. I mean, anyone who breaks 15, like you're in a league of your own. And even though it's homeschool, and even though it was the very first week of the season, I have to take Owen Munn for that kind of impact.
All right. I'm going to go over to football. We haven't made a football pick so far.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to go with a top recruit. I'm going to go with somebody whose impact on their team has helped put their program into some rare air.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go Nicholas Goulet, the quarterback at Green Hope High School. Green Hope, a 4-0 start to their season. It's the first time in over 20 years that they've done that. They won 44-0 on Friday night against Northern Durham. But not only is he third in the state in passing, he leads the state in passing touchdowns. And for a program that's now gearing up for conference play, and again, we don't know how long this run is going to be for Green Hope. They had a fortuitous, non-conference schedule, but you can't go 4-0 without somebody making that big leap and that big next step. And Nicholas Goulet has done that to this point for the Falcons. We're going to get a little bit more into what the Falcons playoff picture could look like later in this show, but I'm going to go with him with my fourth pick. One more pick for each of us, J. Mike. Who are you going with?
Okay. So I had not thought about this person going into this activity, but then something hit me, and I'm going to go with a sophomore athlete out of Princeton, Teo McFadder. Okay.
Ooh, good one. I was thinking about him.
Let me walk you through some of these stats through 4 games. Okay. So he is kind of lining up at quarterback, but obviously runs with the ball a lot.
Yep.
His completion percentage, only throwing it 18 times, but that's, again, like almost as much as he threw it all of last year, is 72% with 3 touchdowns. Okay. And no interceptions. On the ground, he has almost 900 yards in 4 games. That's pretty darn good. 14 touchdowns. He's already about to the halfway point of last year's numbers that he got in 12 games through 4. And then on defense, he's got 16 tackles in 4 games. You think, oh, that's pretty good. But he also has 3 picks. So he has 3 picks. He has almost 900 yards rushing. He's completing 72% of his passes. He has a 92-yard fumble recovery for touchdown. Like, I'm just waiting for the guy to get a pick 6, get a kickoff return for touchdown.
He doesn't have many boxes left to check.
Oh yeah, I think he could check them all. I think he really, really could. If anyone would kick to him if he was back to receive or something like that. So just really, like, what else do you want from a guy when he can do all of those things, right?
Yeah.
So only a sophomore, and he's someone that like has last year as a freshman. You're like, oh my gosh, this guy going to make All-State as a freshman? Maybe not then, but this year, keep out that pace and absolutely welcome to the club.
So I'm going to stay in Green Hope's conference. I'm going to switch sports. I'm going to go from football back to volleyball. I'm going to bring your earlier pick of Cardinal Gibbons back into the mix. I'm going to bring my pick of Marvin Ridge back into the mix. And I'm going to cheat a little bit. I'm going to pick Riley Taylor and Lindley Miller of Green Level. The only reason is I can't sort between the two of who is more impactful.
Did you trade for more picks? What is this?
You know what? I ended up giving away next episode's pick for an additional pick in this round. The reason I say that, though, is when you look at their statistics, they are identical. Same amount of kills, same amount of blocks. The impact that they've had on Green Level, now the number 1 team in the state, who now that they've swept Marvin Ridge and Cardinal Gibbons, who are 2 and 3 right behind them, they're looking near invincible at this point. I just don't think they can be beat at this point of the year. And as you had mentioned, one of the cool parts to volleyball is teams just keep getting better and better and better. So it is kind of scary to think that the more they gel together, the better that they're going to get. Obviously, Green Hope is there, and I would be foolish to think that they would sweep Green Hope however many times they end up playing them this year, because it's ultimately going to come down to that. But this team, the reason they weren't preseason top 2 was because, they did lose an NC State recruit into Leah Francombe last year. That's not like easy to just like brush off as no problem. They graduated a couple of starters from that team. Obviously, that a young core, but like a lot was going to be relied upon from Miller and Taylor, and they have just elevated their game even more. Both of them Division I bound, but they've taken their game to another level, and so has that program. So I fully intend for them to go wire to wire as an unbeaten team and win an 8A state championship. Obviously, there's a long way to go and some big matches forthcoming with the Green Hopes of the world. They even have Cleveland in a couple of weeks. But in terms of impact, like talk about like answering the bell there. You knew there was going to be a lot of pressure on you to make plays, and both of them have. So that's my 5 picks. 6. And those are J Mike's 5 picks. Again, if there's an athlete that is performing well in your region of the state during a particular week, you can go on to highschoolot.com. You can go on our social media. The link is also there. You can nominate a student athlete to be one of the High School OT athletes of the week. Every Wednesday, we are announcing 12 of the top performing athletes in each region of the state. So that is a male and female athlete for the 252, the 336, the 704, the 828, the 910, and the 919 area codes. So each area code, all 6 of them, they get a male and female athlete of the week. A lot of these programs that we've already mentioned have had some top performers already. And some of these names that we've drafted, I think you can expect to see them at some point or another during this fall, given their impact on their school and their area. We're gonna switch gears one more time here, though. I mentioned a little bit about like Green Hope football. They're 4-0. One of the magical things that I think I brought up in the post-game show on Friday is with this new realignment, a lot of programs got the opportunity to wipe the slate clean scheduling-wise, and you're starting to see some of these programs break out. You've seen a lot of programs buck long losing streaks. I think it was the first 3 weeks of the season. We had South Brunswick end theirs. We had Western Harnett end theirs. You had West Caldwell end theirs. You had Garinger end theirs. Ballantyne Ridge just beat Garinger last Friday to get its first win ever as a program. You've got programs like Dixon and Cary and Green Hope, all 4-0 now. You've got a program like Chapel Hill that was gunning to become 4-0. Last Friday, and they fell to an 8. Yeah, Fred T. Ford is in that mix. West Iredell started the year red hot, 3-0. Just so many programs like I feel like they have like some newfound life with this realignment, and it's worked well for them. But one of the things that comes with that is you get 10 weeks of the season. By next week, for a lot of these programs, they will be at the halfway point of the regular season, which is wild to think about. But for those teams that are 5 games in by next Friday night, they'll be at the halfway point. And so it's getting to become that time to talk about playoffs. And as we mentioned on an episode or 2 ago, Joel Bryant starting to fire up playoff projections for the 3 bracketed sports, that being football, volleyball, soccer. Volleyball and soccer, there's enough matches that have happened already through the first 5 weeks that you can start to get a good idea of who some of these top teams are going to be. But football, it's a lot harder because it goes at a slower pace because you only get 1 game a week. So we're sitting here 4 weeks now in the books, and we're looking at these RPIs, and there's a lot of teams that are top seeds that are technically right now projected to get buys that are just kind of really, at the moment, running off of the strength of them having a 3-0 record or a 4-0 record or something like that. For example, like West Charlotte, who right now we have ranked at High School OT as the number 3 team in the entire state, the number 2 team in the entire 8A classification. West Charlotte is projected to get a bye in the first round of the playoffs and then go on the road to the 2 seed Apex Friendship in the West. And just hearing that, you're just like, that doesn't make any sense.
West Apex, yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about the East-West line. You can go back a couple episodes, and J. Mike and Joel have a great breakdown of what that means, what East-West lines look like, and all of that. But J. Mike, how do we differentiate here? Because Joel came out today putting out some of his projections here on Sunday. There's 2 ways you can do it, and Joel is taking on both of those ways. It's here's what playoff projections would look like right now, given the RPIs, even though really hard with this small sample size. And then here's forecasted projections based on our own in-house personal power rankings, which will probably be more reflective of what RPI will look like towards the end of the year. Maybe off by a few spots, but for the most part, reflective of that. How long do you think it's going to take, J. Mike, with this new realignment before we truly get an understanding of when football RPIs and projections are going to feel realistic? Because right now, in my opinion, at least, they don't feel realistic.
Yeah, I think if you were to look at them now, well, you have to understand. Let me backtrack a little bit. Understand what the coaches asked for in changing the formula this year. They wanted less emphasis on who your opponents were, right? That went down from like 30% to 20%. And the part that went up was your own personal winning percentage. So that's now 40% instead of 30%. Well, what this means is that it means that you're almost strictly looking at wins and losses by terms of what is on paper, not the true strength. That is the advantage of opponents that I think a lot of coaches just frankly didn't care for, didn't want to hear about, and didn't hear anything. What they instead thought was, hey, if I'm 9-1 and I play a team that has 8 wins, I should get credit for being the 8-win team. Don't look into who they played. Just know that they won 8 games. That can work in a lot of sports and not have as drastic a difference as football, because in football, the haves and have-nots have gotten farther and further apart in football the last couple of years, right? The last decade. Some of that is participation numbers and all sorts of other trends. But now you take that team in that loaded conference, they're not going to get as much of a reward for being in that loaded conference. And you take that team that's scheduled easy, they're not going to be as damaged as much for scheduling easy. So that means the RPIs are not really going to shake out until, I believe, probably halfway through the traditional conference schedule. So you're looking at the 1st of October, where all of a sudden you're looking like, oh my gosh, we're in the last month of the season. We have 3 more weeks to go, 4 more weeks to go. Only then is it going to really kind of, flesh things out. No offense to any team that's celebrating being 3-1 or 4-0 for the first time in forever. But right now, you're way ahead of a really good team that's 2-2. And that's going to change at some point, but it's not going to change as quickly as it did in the old way. I think a lot of coaches, I don't think they'll regret the RPI change. I think they'll say, you know what, just on principle alone, it makes more sense that my winning percentage matters just as much as my opponent's winning percentage. And the thing that should matter the least should be opponents. And they're just going to stick with that and ride with that. But you have to understand that will make they'll make a few differences that you also have to be okay with when it comes to football, because you have a small sample size. You have 10 games. Whereas in these other leagues, you're going to see that everything might look about right. I know we're going to have playoff projections, a number of things, but like, for instance, as I'm kind of looking through them myself, in girls tennis, like, we're almost through the year in girls tennis with that. So, if you've lost 2 matches already, even if you scheduled tough, you're kind of behind a team that hasn't played much of anybody, but is, 4-1 right now. And again, that's just something that coaches really wanted, and they were tired of hearing about it. And I understand why they didn't want to go back to the old way, which was like Max Prep's rankings, because Max Prep's rankings take everything into account to the point where coaches would see themselves winning and falling further and further down the Max Preps rankings. That doesn't happen as much with RPI, and coaches are a little bit more okay with it, because Max Preps will be like, yes, you beat that team, but man, that team was bad. And oh, by the way, this team you played in week 2, they just lost their 2nd in a row, and they just lost to this team. So actually, we used to think you were a top 50 school. Now we think you're a top 75 or 100 school because of all this other stuff that went on. And coaches just did not like to see themselves plummet while they were winning. But then again, so that's the trade-off is like, I think you're going to see these changes take a little bit slower because of the heavy emphasis on your win-loss percentage. If you are Green Hope or Carey, you have 4 wins in the bank. Think about that. Your win-loss percentage can only like realistically get to about 500 at this point. There's another win on your schedule somewhere. Like
Yep.
you're okay, and everyone who played you will kind of take the benefit of that as well. I think it will be really interesting for us with the opponents thing reduced. Is what does the RPI show? Like who's the RPI benefit as a conference? Because every year there's a conference that went out there and they just play like gangbusters in non-conference, and then all of their teams make the playoffs.
The old Mid-Eastern Conference in Wilmington. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. The Northern Athletic used to do that, right? Where
Yep.
like even if Wakefield or Knightdale are at the bottom, they did well enough in the non-conference. Everybody got in. It's going to be more likely more teams get in because we have only 12 teams per class are going to miss the playoffs, thereabouts. But also, it's going to be interesting how many people are getting first round buys, like because they played in a conference where maybe that team went 3-1, and we all know they're not a serious contender, but the RPI really likes it. It'll be interesting to see like who gets elevated, who gets taken down. I know the conference I'm most interested in seeing is the MEC Power 6, because you have these teams are all together. These schools are all together because they all are pretty much really good at football, really good at basketball, really good at track, really good at a few other sports. And then these other sports they're not as good at. So for RPI, it helps them out tremendously that they're playing one another. If they all handle business in the non-conference, which is not always the case because they challenge themselves in the non-conference, will they have the RPIs that they like, that they feel like they deserve? Or will they come back to the table and say, actually, maybe this conference was a mistake because we didn't get credit for how good we are? Who knows? I know that's a long answer, but that's what I'm most interested in seeing the rest of the way.
Yeah, on the topic of that conference right now, if you look at projection or just RPIs, because it's a 7A, 8A split league, the highest RPI from that conference right now in 8A is Mallard Creek with the 6th highest RPI right now in all of 8A. And then Independence has the highest RPI in all of, the 7th highest RPI in all of 7A. So neither are top 5 in RPI right now, but that is such a loaded league with West Charlotte and Mallard Creek and Independence, and the list goes on, Chambers, the list goes on and on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how that all plays out, because as good as that league is, those really good teams are going to have to lose at some point to one another. Yeah. And so how much does this new RPI formula punish that or help it? We don't know. We're going to have to find out. I think that's the intriguing part about it. And it's a reason that you should become a High School OT insider if you're not already, to see what those projections look like. Again, Joel Bryant's been working on forecasted projections. So that is based off of his RPI power ranking, or his personal power rankings for each classification, where your team would slot in there. That's a lot more realistic to what you would expect by season's end at the end of October. And then there's the RPI projections, which are, as we're sitting here now on September 14th, the NCHSAA's RPIs. For instance, let's go 8A. Your number 1 is Hoggard. Your number 2 is Huff. Your number 3 is Apex Friendship. Your number 4 is Pinecrest. Then you have Millbrook, Mallard Creek, Myers Park, Chambers, West Forsyth, Jordan. So those are the teams that are slotting in right now in those projections. That's what you can see if you choose to look at the RPI ones compared to the power rankings ones. Obviously, Joel's power rankings have Huff right up there, up top. West Charlotte would be in that mix. Millbrook would be up there as well. But kind of the Apex Friendships, the Pinecrest won't be those like 2-3 seeds. Getting those first round buys based on those power ranking projections. So there's 2 of those. You can go on highschoolot.com. If you have not already, you can use the promo code September, get $15 off of an annual subscription to High School OT Insider, and you can be set and locked in for projections year round on High School OT. Again, the ones that are beginning to come out right now over this next week are going to be volleyball, boys soccer, football. And then obviously when we get into the winter, you'll be able to have access to basketball projections. And then in the spring, all sorts of sports have projections: lacrosse, baseball, softball, soccer, you name it. Tons of projections in the spring. Joel's always very busy with that, but you can check that out as well. A lot coming up here on High School OT. Obviously, a week's worth of coverage. Rankings will be coming out on Monday morning, afternoon, and evening for 3 sports. Mid-season rankings, as Jay might kind of alluded to earlier, they're on the horizon as well. So you can get a good idea in sports like golf, tennis, cross country, where some of these programs stand at the halfway point of the season.
We've never done mid-season rankings for cross country and golf, but now we can. Now we have enough data, so we're gonna give it a go and see how it is. So
lots on the horizon here at High School OT. And then again, after this full week's worth of coverage, we'll have football next week, the High School OT post-game show presented by Talk It Out NC. J. Mike will have a call next Friday of the High School OT Game of the Week presented by Alpaca Peruvian Chicken. So lots coming up before we talk to you next here on the High School OT Press Box. We thank you for joining us, though, this week, and hope to see you next week. Enjoy week number 6 of the NCHSA season.